So I would like to invite to the stage Professor Marcus Buckeridge. Thank you, Marcus, for coming. Professor Marcus Buckeridge is a biologist by degree. He holds a PhD title from the University of Stirling from Scotland. He did his postdoc at Purdue University in USA, working with plant biochemistry, plant physiology. He is a professor at the University of São Paulo, the Botanics Institute, and he works with plant physiology, cell wall formation, degradation, and climate change. Professor Buckeridge is also president of the São Paulo Academy of Science and is involved in the organization, for instance, of the March for Science that happened already, and it's programmed to happen more often in the future. So thank you, Marcus, for coming.
Thank you, Wesley. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure and an honor to be invited for your first symposium. Thank you very much for the invitation. I hope I meet the expectations, at least of Wesley's expectations. We discussed when Wesley invited me. He asked me not to have slides, but to talk to you and challenge you so that we could have a sort of informal conversation. I'll talk a little bit about the theme that Wesley gave me, that is politics and bioenergy, and then we can discuss, right? I would like to thank you because in the fourth March for Science at Avenida Paulista, many of you were there. Thank you very much for being there. This is really very important. And I was very glad to see that the bioenergy is engaged, politically engaged, and we need that at this time. I just would like to apologize. I'll have to leave immediately as I finish. I explained that to Wesley because I'm going to give an interview to the program Panorama of TV Cultura about science in Brazil, so that's important for us. We are trying to push all the possibilities, to take all the opportunities possible to speak about science, and I'll come back to this in my talk. Well, when we talk about politics, I think the first thing I have to tell you is what I understand by politics. Not many people, we talk a lot about politics, but not many people really think about what is politics. And I've been reading a lot about that for many reasons, and especially when I became the president of the Academy of Sciences, I realized that politics is really very important, and politics is fascinating. If you want to read about that, understand better what is democracy, where it comes from, etc. If you didn't do it, I think it would be quite important to do it. I usually like to divide politics, to define politics on the basis of an author that I like very much. Is an Italian author named Norberto Bobbio. Who separate intellectuals from politicians, right? What is an intellectual? Have you ever thought about that? What is an intellectual? What is a politician? Are we scientists intellectuals, or we are technicians in society, right? What are we? So Norberto Bobbio divides it very well in a book that is a collection of his articles, some of his articles, in my opinion, the best collection of his articles. So the intellectuals, they are always examining things and having opinions that diverge within their own minds. So an intellectual is a person, and the scientist is sort of similar to that, that is saying, okay, I see that, and I see this way, but I also see the other way. And I don't know exactly which way is better, right? The politician, on the other hand, is somebody that will say, well, I see this way, and I see this way, and in my opinion, we should go this way. So it chooses a direction, and works on what I call the aspirations of society. What is aspirations of society? I'm learning, I also direct a new program at the University of São Paulo that is about cities, it's called the USP Global Cities. And I'm learning a lot, working together with the people from the social sciences, that I'm a biologist, so I usually work on the hard sciences. I like chemistry a lot. Some of you probably had already a class with me that I'm kindly invited by Andreas every year to give this class on chemistry of the cell walls. So I'm a hard scientist, but I'm learning a lot about the social sciences. And the social scientists, they have different way of thinking. And one of the main things that will drive what a city, for example, or a country will be is called aspirations. The aspirations of society, what this means. But first I'll give you one example. There is a book in which people from Buenos Aires, they wanted to know whether the actual Buenos Aires city was a result of what the architects designed in the past, or the artists saw Buenos Aires in the past. And they look at the comics and the art of the Argentinians, and they look at the projects that the architects and urbanists had for Buenos Aires. And guess what? Guess what Buenos Aires is today? Is the aspiration of the artists and not so much the urbanists and the architects. Because you can make projects, right? But if your project is not aligned with these aspirations, there is no way you can make this project to succeed. Well, these aspirations, then I cannot avoid being a hard scientist, right? I'm trying to understand what these aspirations are. And I hear now I hear it everywhere, right? Everywhere I go now that I know the term, I hear the aspirations. When I go and talk to the social scientists, I hear aspirations, the aspirations, and the aspirations. What are they? So this is all based, in my opinion, so what I'm going to talk to you is very much my opinion and theories that I have myself, and you can dispute that, I hope you do. These aspirations, they are based on how our brain function, right? So it's very much based on neurophysiology, if you want. We have in the center of the brain a place that is called the habit place. So if we all have habits. The way you brush your teeth in the morning, the way you eat, the time that you choose to eat every day, how you drive, whatever, you have this imprinted in this center of the habit. There is a book that is usually called autoajuda, that Brazilians don't like very much, but has a lot of very good information about this. That is the power of the habit, right? Of one author that is really fantastic. The second book is not as good as this one, but if you read that, you will understand what I mean. The center, and I read not only this, but also I keep reading about neurophysiology to understand better how the brain works. And in parallel to that, I'm giving you some information now, and I'll put everything together later on. On the side of that, you have the habit, but on one hand, and the social scientists are now talking about one thing that they call social education. That is something related to the fact that our brains learn together certain things. So if politics is based on aspirations, and we have this center of the habit in everyone's brain, and when we have these aspirations, this means that we see a future. And we usually see a future on the basis of information that we're given, right? Well, in other words, education, what we learn and what we see in television, in the newspapers, what we hear from our colleagues. So this all forms this habit that we have together and makes a collective, right? A collective direction that forms the aspiration of the society. Now, if I am a politician and I challenge these aspirations, I disagree with these aspirations, and I try to conduct you to another direction, it won't work, right? One of the most difficult things there is in the planet is changing habit. Now some other concepts that are important for, that you understand how I think, to understand, or to be able to discuss, or for us to discuss on the same basis. Another thing that intrigued me is, and it's not very easy to find, is what is society? What is a society, right? Because the politicians or the politics runs a society. What is a society? So a society could be, for example, this university, right? You have a society is when a group of people gather and accept a set of rules, right? In any level, you think. Could be the country, could be the Unicamp, could be the city, right? Could be a club. When you accept these rules and collectively you imprint the habit. Now, you imprint the habit, and that habit happens in a sort of educational, social education. So we learn together, we accept that, then we have a society. So this is the behavior of the society then is modulated by what we have inside that was imprinted. That's a kind of inception in all of our brains. And if one of us want to go against that, and we are alone, it's very difficult. But if you have a few more people with a new incepted habit that will be able to change the direction of the system in any way, and if you gather and if you are big enough, you can make a revolution, right? A revolution is when you change this habit. Okay, so we have the society, defining the society in this way, so imprinted brains that work together and accept the same rules, right? And this evolves, and we have to think that in a human society, and there are other kinds of societies in other animals as well, like the ants and other animals that are social animals. They also have rules, and they have to follow the rules. But if we think of the humans as a society, we have now to think of how long we live, and we have to think that we have generations, right? You here, most of you here, are people from a generation that is different from me. So my inception has some things that, some ideas that are common to you, and other ideas that are not common between us, right? So this advances, but you have to mind that what we are now, what our society is now, I'll come back to bioenergy, don't worry. But I need to say that to start the discussion. So what we are now in Brazil is the result of these collective ideas that we have that are incepted, that are inside the brains of our politicians and their accessors and all the people that surround them and all of us, right? So I may be privileged in one way. It's not a very good thing in this case to see when I was very young, I had this I could appreciate the inception of the older people than me. And the inception that we had in Brazil is that the Brazilians were kind people, honest people, right? And were the people that were looking to the future. And this changed drastically. And the inception today is the inception that we are seeing every day. I'm not going to discuss that, but just to say that all these problems of corruption that we are having in the country is not, I'm not excusing the politicians, but this is an inception that is everywhere. You see people stealing everywhere, right? Even children probably are incepted with this idea of if you steal, I can steal too, right? So this has sort of game theory as well, because the society works very much in a game theory direction. Like, for example, if Wesley has a very good idea, like, for example, starting a workshop, and if this idea is in the aspirations of your brains, then you think that this is very nice, and you follow, and you come to this meeting. But if you disagree with him, you would never come here, right? Because you think, okay, this is bullshit, and I don't think like that, and I'm not going to follow Wesley. So there are different ways politics affects the direction, or these habits can be changed. It's, as I said, it's really very difficult to change the habit. If you read the book I mentioned, you see that how difficult it is, and how sometimes you can use this opportunity to help people that are ill on the basis of the habit. Like people with Alzheimer, if the center of the habit is the most deep principle. So when you have Alzheimer, you keep that until the end. So this helps you to have a line for a long time of behavior. But changing behavior is really, really difficult. The two ways that I see you can change the behavior is, one, if you have an extreme event. I'll give you a practical example. The water crisis in São Paulo, right, that we have in 2014. So we have the habit. I grew with the habit. I'm a Paulistano. I was born in the city of São Paulo, and I think Campinas is the same, that we have water forever, enough water forever, right? We always thought that water is, too much water. It will never end. You can use the water. You can wash everything you want. There is no problem with water. But what happened is that our population increased, and even though we have a lot of water indeed, right, we reached a level that was sort of dangerous, and then we have a drought. And this drought approached us to this limit where our habit was challenged. So using the television, if not even efficiently, you can distribute pieces of paper, or you can just tell to other people. It's not just a campaign only works if this campaign is in the aspirations of, that's why I told you about the aspirations. A campaign only works if the aspirations are touched. So everybody was afraid of being without water. And then if you now have a campaign to save water, people change the behavior. They changed indeed. So you saw that we could really decrease the consumption of water for a while. But there is a problem with the center of the habit. You can stop smoking, for example, right? But there is a big challenge that is not if you smoke, or if you smoked, the biggest challenge is not to come back, right? You have to police yourself all the time to avoid coming back and smoking. But once you do it for a long time, you forget it, and then it goes out and something else substitutes that habit. Drinking coffee, for example, right? Okay, then what happened in São Paulo is that we changed the behavior for a while collectively. That's incredible. We changed it collectively, and now we are coming back to the habit again because there is enough water again, and then we remember the habit. So this is one way, extreme events, right? Bear in mind then the climate change, for example, that is forcing is a force that is changing society very drastically. We don't see that because it's going slowly, but it's changing completely the society all over the world. Another way to change the habit is that if in society somebody has a new idea, but this new idea has to work, right? If I have a new idea and I come here and tell you this new idea and it's very useful and fantastic, and you start copying me because you said, oh, this idea is very good, it works for me, then we create aspirations, and this really facilitates the habit, the center of habit, to make the substitution. So these two ways of doing that are the two ways politics can interact with society, right? Because you have to mind that the politicians and the politics is us. It's not the politicians. The politicians that are there, they are in fact slaves of the habit of the people. And that's why some of them are educated and they read and they understand what is politics. Right? You have this kind of politician that is a politician and has the natural ability of use politics, which is the art of, in fact, it doesn't look very nice, but the politics is the art of detecting the aspirations and manipulating the masses to go to a certain direction. That's not bad. That's what politics is, right? And if this is good, fine. We go to a very good direction, and we get a lot of money, and we live very happy forever, forever until it ends, right? If the direction is wrong, like is happening, for example, in Venezuela, then people still have the habit for a long time, and if they still have the habit, they will go because they have the aspiration there arresting them. It's just like smoking, right? Maduro is just like smoking a cigarette in this sense, right? Because it's accepted there that they have to have this kind of government, and they go after that, and it's very difficult to move. So you have, and Maduro is a genius in this sense, in terms of manipulation. But this is the other kind of politician. He's the politician that doesn't read anything, as far as I know, I may be wrong, but he doesn't read anything. He's not an intellectual, or he doesn't have the intellectual basis. At the beginning, I separated the intellectuals and the politicians, right? So, according to Bobbio, so a politician could be a pure politician, capable of manipulating, filling the aspirations, and having no idea whatsoever for the future. And driving a society, as I said, could be a club, a university, etc., to a certain direction. Or, on the other side, a politician could be both. Could have the ability of manipulating politically, and at the same time be an intellectual. So this guy here on the right, if he's clever enough, he will have very good intellectuals surrounding him, telling him, look, the directions could be this and that. Now you choose, right? So you don't need to be an intellectual to be a politician in this sense. But if you are, you may be better, because you can judge better whether the ideas of the intellectuals surrounding you are fundamental or not, they should be followed or not. Given that, then the society and the politics can be strongly based on knowledge, right? Or can be flat and empty, have no knowledge based, like, for example, Venezuela, right? Now, was not like that in the past, right? It was a fantastic country in the past. But then when this is empty and the direction is wrong, because it could be empty and the direction could be right, right? This is a matter of luck. But the most important thing I would like to highlight after telling you all of that is that knowledge is important. But now we can ask a question. A politician, what kind of knowledge a politician should use to choose a future? Right? I'll just make a pause and one thing that I forgot to tell you about democracy. The Greeks thought that democracy, in fact, is a corruption, right, of another system that is much better than democracy. Because they said, okay, you can have a government ruled by one person, monarchy. You can a society run by a few people, oligarchy. You can have the society run by several intellectuals and a few people together, but it's much more people. This is called the politeia. And then you have the corruption of the politeia, that is democracy, when everybody wants to rule, right? This, for me, reminds my country, right? Everybody thinks that can rule. Everybody is an intellectual and a politician, and so the directions, there is no politics there because there is no direction. Politics only exists if you have a direction. If you have all the arrows pointing to different sides, one pointing there, another pointing there, but we go nowhere, right? That's why we need politics. Good. Coming back, knowledge. What kind of knowledge you think, now for you, what kind of knowledge you think is important for a politician to rule? What do you think? You can shout. History. What else? Self-knowledge. What else? Nobody says science. Why didn't you say science? Because of the inception, right? History, and probably in your mind, in all of our minds, at least from my point of view, the biggest inception there is in Brazil is called economy. You agree on that? Economical knowledge. Knowing about how to rule money, how to deal with money. This is what you see all the time in the media, discussions about money, right? We need more money. But the Brazilians, they are funny because, okay, money is the first thing, and I agree with that because of the system. Without money, you don't do anything. We wouldn't have ethanol or bioenergy without the money. We wouldn't have science without the money. So money is the first thing we need. But money is not it could be an objective in itself. We want to be rich, right? Say, okay, our goal as society is to be rich. Doesn't matter with what. If we have to invade Uruguay, Argentina, take all what they have and destroy everything, it doesn't matter. We want money, right? So, but this is not, Brazil doesn't even have that, right? It's not so sophisticated as this. Brazil is much more like Jeca Tatu, right? Sitting and waiting for the money to come, right? We sit and wait for the money to appear. And then if the money comes, I eat today. If the money doesn't come, I don't, but tomorrow it will come, right? And so we don't do anything, right? Because all the arrows are pointing to several different directions, and it's going to no direction. Whereas, I don't know if you know, but what probably some history researchers, at least one history researcher that I read, mentions that the Industrial Revolution in the UK happened because Isaac Newton became friends with the politicians at his time. Very influential politicians. And they had discussions about science. Imagine that, 1660, right? 1680. And the guys are discussing science, a science that for us was just starting, right? Physics did not exist yet, as we know, right? Was mathematics separated from physics yet? And these guys were discussing science and the importance of, look, probably Newton was telling his politician friends, look at this. If you manage light, you could have this instrument working here that would be worthy, and we could. And at the same time, the UK was dominating the seas and going everywhere, and said we could sell them. The politician could say, but this is not worthy for us. Okay, this may not be worthy for us, but this could be worthy for one of our colonies, and then we could get money. We could satisfy people there or whatever. So this historian says that this friendship and these discussions that led to the Industrial Revolution later on, 200 years later, because they adopted a new objective. They were probably lost like we are now, with the arrows pointing to several directions, and then they found one direction. And the politicians said, oh, but this is really nice. We could use these guys. What they're saying is not bullshit. We could use these guys and the knowledge that they are producing to make our country better. And they dominated the world with all the things that they discovered later on, right? There was this politics. It was so sophisticated. The idea was so sophisticated that they started to, they had a campaign that to bring scientists. At the time, most scientists, as you know, were men, right? So they would give money and house and many things to scientists from Europe. As the British people like to say, the UK is not Europe for them. So bringing people from the continent, from Germany, from France. If they married a British woman, they would give them money and many things to attract the scientists, because they realized that science was important. And so was Napoleon later on, was the same attitude, and these guys had an aim. We don't. We are always looking at, well, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough, we don't have enough, we don't have enough. Well, okay, so this posed to you, we can talk a little bit about bioenergy in Brazil now. Bioenergy. So the Portuguese and the Spanish and the Chinese, all these guys that spread all over the world with their boats, they had a habit that is to take with them some of their best plants. Right? They usually took their plants with them. If not, when they found a new land and they founded a new church or had a house there or a place to stay there when they could come back, they left somebody there. They went back to their country, and then when they came back again, they would bring the other plants, right, and the other animals as well, to bring all the technologies that they have developed in the past that were easier to use in this place. Of course, they just didn't do that. They used also pau-brasil here. But one of the plants that they brought, the Spanish brought to Central America was sugarcane. Sugarcane was a species that was used to produce sugar. Sugar was not, I don't know if you ever read the history of sugarcane and the sugar. Sugar was very difficult product to find, very, very expensive, right? So they brought sugarcane here because of the sugar. And this was the driver for that was the possible difficulty that they would have and the probability. There was a huge market in Europe for sugar. And they found a very big land with a lot of sun and high temperature. They said, wow, that's fine. We are going to try everything we can here and produce sugar to export to Europe. And so they did, right? Portugal became really very important because of the export of sugar. And with that, sugarcane genetics started, right? Because the agricultures were mixing the varieties and everything they could to get more and more sugar to make it easier to produce sugar. And then, I'm not going into the sugar, it's a fascinating story as well, but, and then time passed, we developed wonderful varieties, and we were very good at producing sugar in very high quantity, exported everything. Sugar is still a very big market and a very good price in the planet, right? Everybody wants sugar, although there is this problem with the getting fat, whatever, but still sugar is very important. And then a great challenge and a great difficulty came in the 70s. I was alive there, and I lived that, and I think some of you lived that too. Around 1975, Brazil was in a very big crisis because we didn't have gasoline. We couldn't import the oil anymore, and to the point that we developed the habit of going in Benguela, how we call here, to save gasoline. That was serious. We was so expensive that we couldn't afford. And then, because of this difficulty, and because of the discovery of biochemistry, I don't know if you know that, but biochemistry, biology and chemistry were separated, just like in the 1600s with Newton, that mathematics and physics were not linked. Biology and chemistry, until more or less the 19th century, they were not linked either, right? And the linkage appeared when somebody discovered fermentation. Somebody discovered that you could use the sugar that was already being produced in large quantities, and you could ferment that using yeast and produce alcohol, right? That was a discovery of biochemistry, and the first journal called Biochemistry was founded, and then biochemistry started. And we had the biochemistry when we are now in 1975. We had biochemistry running here. We had good scientists doing biochemistry here in 1975. Professor Amorim, for example, that many of you know, right? He was already working on biochemistry and fermentation, and many other people. So we had that, and we knew that we could produce alcohol because of the cachaça and everything. We knew that we could produce alcohol from sugarcane, right? But producing alcohol from sugarcane to the whole system, transport system, that was a big challenge. And we did that because of the difficulty. And we changed the habit forever. That's fantastic. We changed the habit forever. Now we use ethanol, at least in São Paulo. In other places, the prices is still too high. We have many things to fix. But we changed the habit forever. And the politics went together with that, because the guys didn't have a way to go. They had to do that because the price of the gasoline was too high. There are many other factors, right? Wesley asked me to politics versus bioenergy. We didn't have other way to go. We had to do that. There was no other easy way to go, but to produce a huge amount of alcohol. And the problem was transporting it, was to having alcohol stations instead of gas stations, or a mixed. And then we did the first full alcohol cars. They didn't work very well, right? We had to learn, right? I was going to the university at the time, and I think some of you here that I see the color of the hair. I had to wake up almost 1 hour before, and while my father and I were drinking coffee, the car was on to heat up the engine, right? Because if you try to leave without heating up the engine, it wouldn't go very well. So we had to warm it up. But this, from the 1970s up to now, thanks to the politics that was only possible because of the difficulty, because I think it would never be done if we could stay comfortable with the gasoline, right? So not being comfortable is something that is important. And this makes a huge difference. For example, if we see how the Americans are, if you read the biography, for example, of Thomas Jefferson, and you see what was the inception that the guys during the American Revolution had in their minds. Do you know what they had in their minds? An American can do anything. Anything. No matter if you don't have the resources or the money, an American can do anything. And they incepted that in the brains of that generation. And this created what we see nowadays, that is the United States of America. They're losing that, right? They are now being contaminated by us with corruption and with all the problems. But for a long time, they dominated the world because of this inception. We can do anything. We can fly, we can do anything, we can go to the moon, we can do this. This is behind this inception. This is the aspiration of every American being in New York or being in the field in the middle of nowhere, right? They made sure that this inception was put there. And this is politics. Thomas Jefferson was a politician. You have to separate, there are people that are called polymaths. Right? They are politicians, they are scientists, they are intellectuals, they are everything. The polymaths are disregarded, especially in Brazil. They are disregarded because people say that it's not possible that somebody can know so many different things from different areas. But some people challenge that, and Thomas Jefferson is a very good example of that. And this makes a huge difference in our country. So we are looking for a politician. That's my main message. We are looking for a savior. Brazil is always looking for a savior because we are always waiting for the food to come. We don't go after it. We don't think that we can do anything, and we actually can. If you look at the Brazilian science nowadays, we can do anything. We can be better than the American science in many areas. We can be better than the European science in many ways, right? But we have this vira-lata complex, right? That is always telling us that no, we don't have the right, only our colonizers have. So it's time for a revolution. Your generation is, when you have the two generations, one generation like mine, that I'm not proud of, right? This is the generation that is stealing. We are really sorry about that. We couldn't move that, but this generation is installed, and your generation is the generation that is coming. Is a generation that has already ideas. It's very difficult for one generation to move another because it's easier that the new generation that is coming is transformed by the system because of the habit. Remember, you also have the same inception, right? The same inception of this habit that I have, but you have new habits as well. So a society could change rules, but this is very difficult. Changing habit is very difficult. But then choosing the knowledge that I'm going to use and choosing the direction is very important. That's why every one of us have to participate in this direction. But with our aspirations, we have to mind that if we are participating on that with an arrow that is going this way, you have to be very sure that going this way is much, much better or done this way, or knowing that this way is so bad that you have to change. I think we are at this point. We are at the point that we have to find something else. My defense is that bioenergy is an example of what we can do. We are still the greenest country in the planet. The energy matrix of Brazil is still far away from any other. And now these guys are coming with the electrification in Europe and saying that they are going to electrify and they are not going to produce cars with liquid transportable fuels anymore and, from 1941. And so I asked them, well, okay, fine. This is all because you don't want to emit CO2 or because you want to adapt to the climate change? Yes, this is the motive. So where are you going to take the energy from? Thermoelectrics. They don't have any other way to do it. Right? So they are going to pollute in another way. Of course, this has lots of benefits, but we have to be very careful not to follow the aspirations of others, right? And a grad course like this is very important. You were talking, Andreas were talking about the interdisciplinary and working together. What is working together is gathering supervisors and grad students to write about why ethanol is so important for the planet in many different angles. Why? Because the guys in Italy, in Germany, and in the United States, they are writing and they just disregard all that we discovered. They just disregard Brazil. They don't care about what we discovered here, even if the numbers are saying that we are the greenest country in the planet, right? We use more ethanol than anybody in the world. We use biodiesel more than anybody in the world. We have if we go to solar, we have an opportunity to go to a very high level of producing energy, and then we could electrify our cars. But saying no thermoelectric, we are electrifying, but we have solar energy, and our electrification is together with ethanol and fuel cells or whatever. So this is, I changed it from the politics in Brazil for the politics of the world. I would like to finish with that. We are not looking at global. We have to change a little bit our mind. When you go to do the assessments of the literature, take a look to the big papers that are coming in the big journals about bioenergy. I can send you some. I'm now working in the IPCC, so I'm reading a lot about that. I'm working in a report that is setting the direction of the world, the world society. We are now giving a list of things for the direction of the world, and bioenergy is one of them. But I have to fight there because I'm the only one. I have to fight against other people saying, no, your bioenergy is not very good because you have a footprint so and so and so. And I don't have enough data to defend our bioenergy. That's why you are so important. That's why this grad course is so important. It's not only because it's going to form students, to make doctors, right? if you mind you that in a grad course like you are now, you have to have the same attitude that I mentioned before. It's not only getting your PhD or your master's, right? It's much more than that. Much more than that. It's Brazilian bioenergy, right? You are part of this history. You have a responsibility for that. I don't know if you feel that, but I feel, I mean, I'm here, alive now, and talking to you, producing papers and doing things. I have a huge responsibility for your sons and your grandsons and the grandsons of your grandsons. I have in the same way that these heroes that made ethanol to work in our country, they fulfill the responsibility. So you're not just students, right? You're not just students. You have to look at the local, but you also have to look at the global. You are the best weapon we have because you have the brains. And once we have an idea, and this idea is useful, there are lots of links to economy and other things here. I'm being very, very simple here, maybe even naive, but if you force this inception, maybe we could really prove to the Brazilian society that is absolutely lost, crazy. All directions are possible. We are completely lost as a society. I don't see any direction. Now, especially with the new election, nothing, zero. We could give them a north. I don't like the word north. I prefer south, right? We could give them a south. Right? We should use south instead of north. We should change our language. We could give them a south, and them, not them, could give us a south, and saying, right? Paraphrasing Obama, yes, we can. We can do. You see why Obama says, yes, we can. This is Thomas Jefferson speaking, right? So this is a good thing to copy. Yes, we can. It's a good thing to copy. For bioenergy, even better. Thank you very much, Weston.
Thank you very much, Professor. Questions? Just raise your hand. The beautiful ladies are gonna find you. As you notice, we are a bit in advance. I rush a little bit to start because Professor Buckeridge is going to leave 5 minutes sooner. We still have 10 minutes, 15 minutes for questions. She has the...
I'd like to know what's your perspective about the development of science now. We have a very complicated scenario in or economic and political perspective for the next years, I guess, not just for the new elections. And what do you think could be our perspective for science?
Well,
sorry to interrupt. I think people from the front, in the front couldn't hear you.
What's my perspective about the science in Brazil, you mean? In Brazil. Okay, because São Paulo produces about 60% of the science of Brazil, so you have to think about São Paulo. And part of the money that comes from São Paulo, we tend to think that FAPESP is the only thing, but I bet that all of you have CAPES and CNPq fellowship, so there is, I estimate, I didn't measure yet, we are trying to measure, about 30% of the money that comes from São Paulo comes from non-FAPESP money. The crisis, in this sense, the crisis is very important, the crisis that we are crossing. We crossed this crisis, but and Brazil is even worse, right? The rest of Brazil is even worse. Places like Rio de Janeiro that has a very good science, very good scientists, and they depend on the money of Brasilia. Rio Grande do Sul, they are going to suffer, and they are already suffering and losing people. But after we shout, and I think we have a person that we have to honor. She will be honored tomorrow evening. We have the new members of the Academy of Sciences being becoming new members, and one person that will be honored tomorrow is Professor Helena Nader. That was the president of the Brazilian Society for Development of Science, SBPC. This work, she worked as we should with the politicians. She was there all the time, talking to the politicians, talking to the ministers, talking to the president all the time. She and her team, right? This made a difference. We joined her in our academy, and the Academy of Science of Brazil also worked together with SBPC, and this made a difference. This really made a difference because the budget is now, we were going to go to 2.4 million. 2.4 billion only. Now we are at 4 billion, and we can at 6 billion. So we regenerated a little bit of the budget. Let's see next year, right? Regenerated in the paper. Let's see the next year. But we regenerated that, and there is a new program that could use money from companies. If we are clever enough to grab this money, it will go to 8 billion. And we are now preparing our army to go to Temer and to new candidates and see that we have to go to 10 billion. So I'm usually optimistic. I'm called Pollyanna many times, but I'm more of the side of yes, we can. If we go and we fight, we are going to get it. We don't have to lose. You have to stay put, and you have to help as you did going to Avenida Paulista, and much more, writing and shouting and giving ideas. If we don't do that, if we don't tell the society that we have a scientific community, and the scientific community is strong. It's not only the university professors and the researchers in the institutes, but also all the students that will be these guys in the future. Nobody will hear. Nobody can hear what you're not saying, right? So we have to do that. We have to find and understand politics and work with the politics, not against it, but work with them, right? Trying to manipulate them, just like they manipulate the society. So if they have no ideas, they cannot manipulate, we do it. We are the intellectuals, right? Scientists are also intellectuals, may be intellectuals.
I'll try to formulate my question very briefly.
Bem perto da boca.
Yeah. Firstly, you mentioned that Brazil is the greenest country in the world. I would like to know, like, in what sense, because your focus is on sugarcane ethanol production, and comparing with European countries that maybe they're smaller in territory, and then you mentioned UK going Europe, but like UK going electric by 2050, and I want to know, like, when you mention our country being the greenest country, what is your point of view on food versus fuel issue?
Maybe Brazil is not the greatest country, but it's one of them. We are the 80th economy in the world, so we move the world, although we are not considered, right? Usually, but we are in the main places everywhere. It is not only because of ethanol. I think ethanol is a symbol of us being capable of doing something that the world couldn't do. But we are great in other things, like agriculture, for example, right? We are going to reach a stage by 2040 where we are going to have to double the production of food in the world. And the only place that can do it, actually, that has the technology, political stability, right? We still have it, right? Political stability, technology, right, money, and everything in place is Brazil. Africa has the space, but cannot do it. The US, in the US, all is occupied to produce food. They have only what they call the marginal lands, right? And so they even say that for bioenergy, they have to use the marginal lands, and they were looking for a species to use the marginal lands because they are not going to take the land that produces maize to produce ethanol, although they are the biggest producer of ethanol now from maize in the maize region, right? So they don't say what they want us to do. Food versus fuel is one way. Brazil has a problem with food versus fuel. In the America does not. How much ethanol? They produce more ethanol than us from food, from maize, right? So this is the food versus fuel thing. But Brazil has things that are sub-societies like the agriculture, for example, and the energy that are fantastic and make Brazil to sustain a very good position in the world. The technology that you have in a soy seed, for example, nowadays is equivalent to a mobile phone that you have in your pocket, right? Technology is enormous, the genetics that is in there, and in maize as well. So this is technology. It's not only commodities. Brazil is still producing many things that are commodities, but then we can make it better. There is a program from the government. We never really had a government, but the government made a program that is the Food 2040. Brazil we have the books and we have all the plans, as well as we have for bioenergy, for food, we have all the plans to advance from the field to the industry, right? It's all there. It's just a matter of a politician coming and say, this is the direction, open the way, give the money that it will go. So it's a great country. I think beneath what we are seeing of the corruption and everything, Brazil is still a great country, one of the greatest countries in the world. We have a large population, we have a large market, we can really move the world in many ways. If we don't see it like that, we are going to, it's better move. It's better go to another place, right? Either we use this as a goal or we move.
3 minutes for a last question.
First of all, I would like to thank you. I appreciate very much the presentation. For me, it seems to be that the human beings are motivated by economic factors or some fear of a lack of energy or water, as you told. I would like to know if the sustainability aspects can be motivators to change habits, because for me it seems to not be the main motivator. Maybe a second motivator, but the economic factors and the fear of survival seems to be more important for human beings. I don't know if I'm wrong or right.
We are writing a special report that is called 1.5 degrees warming world. We are examining the options that the planet has at global and local. The local is more difficult. We cannot reach all locals, but the idea is to give the scenarios of what happens if we stay at 1.5 and go down. For that, we would have to spend $100 trillion in the planet, which will provoke a recession of 1% less negative. We just came out from a recession. We imagine the whole world in a recession, right? But if we don't do that and we go over 1.5, And the second scenario is going to 2.7 average. When we say 1.5, is 1.5 in relation to the average temperature between 1820 and 1860. We didn't decide yet what exactly it will be. That will be chapter 1, but it's more or less like that. The average temperature during the Industrial Revolution, when the world was still 0.75 degrees lower. We are now 0.75 or almost 0.8 degrees average higher than the Industrial Revolution. So the second scenario, going to 2.7, would lead us to use technologies like not only bioenergy anymore, but BECCS, bioenergy, together with carbon capture and storage, which is a new technology that is already being used in certain places in the world. But we could plug. I really love the ethanol story, because what we did in the ethanol was we had the sugar production, and we plugged a new part there. We didn't invent a new industry. We just plugged the fermentation, right? And got the first generation. Now what we are trying to do is to plug the second generation. And the next will be to plug the carbon capture system. Sir, right? It's the BECCS. BECCS. So if we can do that. We are ready to do that. We have more than 300 mills working in Brazil. We can do that, but people have to have lines of research and start to working on BECCS or import technology. So we will be ahead. We will be even greener. Why? Because we can have negative emissions with BECCS instead of having any emission. If we couple ethanol first, second generation with BECCS, we could have negative emissions. We have to calculate that. But we can have negative emissions according to the calculations that we see. So in the second scenario, 2.7, we have to use many of these technologies, right? Like BECCS and others. Afforestation, the Amazon is a problem. I have no time to talk about that here. And the third scenario is the scenario of we go to 4.5. If we go to 4.5, then there is no way we are going to have to use technologies called geoengineering, which means fertilization and alkalinization of all the sea. Throwing particles in the atmosphere to decrease light in about 1%, solar radiation management, all the atmosphere. So we are going to be mouse in an experiment, right? There is no way. And then the inequality will rise, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the three scenarios, right? And sustainability is behind the first scenario mainly, and the second scenario. What I see from sustainability, looking from a global perspective, that in a sense is not existent for us because we have our perspective, local perspective here, but sustainability is slowly putting economy aside, right? Because sustainability works with all that we already have. And the way we deal with economy and production is gone. And it's gone from the beginning of the 2000. From the beginning of the 2000, the world economy is not pushed anymore by oil. Few people know that, but the new papers that are coming are saying before, everything that happened to the oil price will change the world economy. From the 2002, 2005, it doesn't happen anymore because the world is changing towards a sustainable. So I think this wave of sustainability is incommensurable. No, there is no way at all that we can fight against it. It became an aspiration and it's incepted all over the world in the places that rule anything. And here, what we are doing is to do the same inception in the kids, right? You have kids in the street. If you throw a paper in the street, probably a kid will come this size and tell you, you cannot do that, right? Because they are learning that in school. their brain are being washed, in other words, in this way. And all the companies all changed. I mean, a company to be somebody nowadays has to take care of the environment in any way, has to think about sustainability. The problem with sustainability is the definition. It's very difficult to know exactly what is sustainability. And we can talk forever about that. But that's my view of how things are going. Don't try to fight against it. And we are right in the top of the wave, right? We are not sinking in the water, doing a surf analogy, right? We are not sinking in the water at all. We are right on the top of the wave with our 300 and something mills producing ethanol, second generation coming, and BECCS possible, right? And solar energy. That's why Brazil is a great country.
So join me once again in a warm applause to Professor Buckeridge. So, thank you very much.